Today we are going to interview some professors and who investigated the problem in Solomon Island. And I'm today's reporter, Jiaxin Chen, and the first one is our professor.
Hi, I'm Wenke. So today I will talk about the vulnerabilities and the vulnerable group of the Solomon Island.
Alright, Professor Wenke. The first question is, what is some of the most serious vulnerabilities that Solomon Island are faced with in nowadays?
It's well known that the climate change brings a lot of vulnerabilities to the Solomon Island, like the sea level rise, the species extinction, El Nino events, ocean acidification, and the saltwater intrusion.
Alright, that's good. The second question is that, can you list some examples of potential destructions result from these vulnerabilities?
Well, of course, as reported, there were at least 5 reef islands in the remote part had lost due to the sea level rise and coastal erosion. Like the El Nino reduced agriculture production because of the high temperature and the dry soil, and almost half of the plant and animal species has experienced the local extinction due to the climate change. Moreover, the saltwater intrusion and the ocean acidification heavily influenced the public health and agriculture.
Alright, the third question is, as we all know, saltwater intrusion is one of the most significant problems of the climate change in Solomon Island. So why this can seriously impact the daily life of Solomon Islander?
That's because the intrusion of the water does affect the groundwater resource, therefore the fresh water's quality was reduced, and the water resource is considered as one of the key elements of the food security and public health. So it directly related to the local residents' life.
Yeah, it does seriously for the Solomon Islander. So the last question is, do you think there are some specific vulnerable groups in our Solomon Island, such as children, females?
The Solomon Island have made effort to improve the environmental and healthy monitoring and the surveillance system by the health and care sector across the Solomon Island for specific vulnerable group. And it has found that in the Solomon Island, some specific diseases that link to the climate change or some weather pattern being more and more with women and children. This is a vulnerability of women because women in Solomon Island often are treated poorly by men. And the indigenous people are very vulnerable to climate change because they use most of the island for food and shelter and do not get much help from the outside source. This could cause destruction to their way of life with increase of storms and the sea level rise and loss of crop production. Moreover, the poor people are also greatly affected by climate change, and this because of a link of resource they have to protect themselves. So they are directly exposed to the climate change effect, such as rising sea level and increase in storms, and have no means to escape this condition. Moreover, the wildlife is vulnerable because of the increased coastal erosion and loss of soil feature.
Alright, today we invite professors Yan Yunchu to answer some questions about the recommendations and other climate change problems in Solomon Island.
Hi, I'm Yan Yunchu. Today I'm going to talk about some recommendations for Solomon Island to solve the problem caused by climate change.
Professor Yan Yunchu, the first question is, actually we have recorded some histories about the impact of climate change in Solomon Island, and we still want to know something about the climate change impact situations in nowadays Solomon Island.
Solomon Island is highly vulnerable to droughts, extreme rainfall, floods, tides, and also sea level rise. For example, droughts and usually associated with the El Nino phenomena. One of the major prolonged droughts occurred in the eastern part of the country in the Tumato province in 2004, causing food and water shortage.
Alright, the second question is, do you still have some recommendations for Solomon Island to deal with the climate change impact?
Yes, we have totally 4 recommendations for Solomon Islands. First one is to seek assistance from the international society and organizations. International aid is one of the most efficient way for Solomon Islands government to adapt to the international climate change. Second, reducing the greenhouse gases emission by innovate the technology in numbering industry, which is a big part of greenhouse gas source. For example, they can import some of the new equipment that are more efficient with lower cost. And the third one is do nationwide tree plantings, increase the forest coverage rate and promote sustainable numbering. The last one is to do restoration work on the coral reefs and the natural water systems around the Solomon Islands, putting in more work to help clean, rebuild, and maintain these natural marine ecosystems and make it healthier.
That sounds good about the recommendations. So, do you think it has some advantages or disadvantages about these recommendations, and especially in the economic and social aspect?
I think with the economic support of other countries and organizations, Solomon Island could improve their abilities of adapting climate change and solve many climate issues, and also the life standard of the residents could be improved a lot. And second, innovate new technology and equipment may increase the costs, and some people may lose their job resulting from the lack of new tech knowledge. But it could also bring us more advantages, such as reducing the waste of timber and industrial pollution, enhancing productivity and sales. Finally, improve the environment and financial benefits. Third, worldwide tree planting will be a relative cost of labor and tree seeds purchasing, but it could also reduce the effect of greenhouse emission to improve the quality of air. For restoration, the government needs to spend a large amount of money on purchasing equipment and also clean, rebuild, and maintain the environment. But restoration work could drive up the water quality and create a better environment for coral reefs. It also supports the fish industry and provide more related jobs for people.
Although the climate change has provided lots of problems for Solomon Island, but do you still think it creates some opportunities for Solomon Island?
I believe that we could still gain some opportunities from climate change. Firstly, since Solomon Islands were badly affected due to the climate change, there are some opportunities for the government to apply for the funding so that they could improve their abilities of adapting climate change and solve the food safety problems. Besides, because of the El Nino event, the warm season extends and less rainfall, it could attract more people coming from cold regions like Michigan to enjoy their warm weathers. Also, a very important one, job opportunities. Because of the damage of climate change, we need people to clean the beaches, towns, natural areas, and hire people to fix problems caused by climate change. Finally, some experience proved that elevated carbon dioxide levels can increase plant growth. People will have more food to use.
Alright, today we have our two climate change professors, Chu Qichen and Gabby Gilly. Okay, let's ask them some questions.
Hi, Jiaxing Chen. I'm Chu Qichen. I'm come here to talk about several UNFCCC's program, and I will talk about Solomon Islands economics and the fossil fuel burning history.
And I am Gabby Galley, and I will be talking about the deforestation history in the Solomon Islands and the UNFCCC.
Okay, today we are going to talk about some questions about the economic, fossil fuel, and deforestation. Also, has some questions about the UNFCCC Kyoto. Okay, the first question is, what do you think the economic and industry history in Solomon
The
Islands?
Industrial Revolution was a transition to a new manufacturing process. Imperialism is the actions that involve a country extending its powers by the acquisition of territories. Before the Industrial Revolutions and global imperialism, Aborigines lived by fishing and cultivations. During the global imperialism period, several British and Australian firms began the coconut planting on the Solomon Island. Economic growth was slow, however, and the islanders benefited little. Even the Solomon Islands became the British protectorate area. The Industrial Revolution did not influence the economic of the Solomon Island a lot. After the Industrial Revolutions, the economic of Solomon Islands still consists of the fishing and cultivations.
As we all know, the fossil fuel burning is the most important part in the industry development. So, can you talk about something about the fossil fuel burning condition in Solomon
Fossil
Islands?
fuels are the source of energy that have developed within the earth over millions of years. Because the fossil fuel, oil, natural gas, and corn take so long to form, they are considered non-renewable. One of the main advantages of the fossil fuel is that they can produce great amount of energy in just one single location. The fossil fuel burning history in Solomon Island is shown on the graph. We can see that fossil fuel burning start time is 1952 and fossil fuel burning peak time 1987, and it's also the first peak time, and it's continued to increase.
Yeah, that's good. So the last one about the economic is the lumber is one of the most important industry in Solomon Island, and it also lead to a lot of deforestations in the Solomon Island. So could you talk about something about that?
Yes, I can. Over 77% of the Solomon Islands is forested. This is a huge amount for these small islands. Solomon Islands have been very heavily lumbered. 39,700 hectares of forest per year from 1990 to 2000. Only this is increasing. A total between 1990,000 and 2005, Solomon Islands has lost over 21% of its forest cover. This 21% of loss of forest cover and woodland habitat is detrimental to the Solomon Islands. This is a livelihood for some of the Solomon Islands' vulnerable populations, and Solomon Islands is a very poor indigenous island. The lumber industry, we need to search for a better way to make income providing jobs for these people.
Okay, let's talk about something about the climate change plan under the UNFCCC. So this year, Solomon Island tried to handle the climate change problem under the UNFCCC Kyoto and the Paris COP. Could you talk about the political platform in Solomon
The
Island?
Solomon Islands have always been a supporter of the UNFCCC. Their plans to help climate change first date back to June 13th, 1992. They're continuing to keep their political platform through Paris and Kyoto. Their political platform for the Paris Agreement is to reduce emissions, increase carbon storage in the forest and ocean ecosystems, and understanding global agreements addressed to international assistance to access financial and technological resources. This country has grown in how they can help the environment in that way for reasonable for them to do. Also, with getting help from other larger countries to support their cause. They will do this by planting more trees for carbon storage on land and in ocean, and be able to accept details for other country for financial and technological support.
Can you list some specific example about the UNFCCC, Kyoto, and Paris COP about the climate change plan in Solomon Island?
I'm going to talk about several programs in the UNFCCC. First is the NAPA, National Adaptation Program of Actions. The duration time is 2 years from 2007. Development of countrywide program that encompasses immediate and urgent adaptation activities to address current and anticipated adverse effects of climate change, including the extreme event. Here we can see that Solomon Islands are acting on it by doing a country-wide program to adapt the way of consumptions to reduce the effect of climate change. The second program is the second National Communications to UNFCCC, stock-taking exercise and enabling activities. The project enables all the signatories to UNFCCC to prepare national communications comprising 3 major elements: a national greenhouse gases inventory, abatement analysis, and vulnerabilities and adaptation assessment. It shows the Solomon Islands focus on the adaptations activities and climate change mitigations, which they try to reduce the vulnerabilities from the climate change. And the duration time is 3 years and is completed during the second quarter of 2011. Solomon Island Adaptation KIP amendment is the third project. The Solomon Island has formally accepted the Doha Amendment to the Kyoto. During the second commitment period, parties commitment to reduce the GHG emissions by at least 18% below like 1990 levels in the 8 years period from 2013 to 2020.
To continue what my partner said, a new climate change plan is the UNFCCC from Solomon Islands. The status of this is to submit their new climate change action plan to the UNF Framework Convention on Climate Change the 30th of September 2015. This agreement was made in the Paris Agreement and will help international aids to the Solomon Islands. The bulk of the population depends on agriculture, fisheries, forestry. Most of the manufacturing goods and petroleum products is imported. The Solomon Islands are rich in undeveloped mineral resources such as zinc, nickel, and gold. Also, the domestic economic expectancy to be more in the 2015 than the previous year. Another UNFCCC program for the Solomon Islands is the contributions to the anthropogenic climate change in the INDC 2015. This addresses the carbon footprint of the Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands is a small contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions, but yet it is still trying to decrease the greenhouse gases. Thus, the Solomon Islands contribute towards limiting the global temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius relative to pre-distress levels by the UNFCCC. The government is working on ways to use renewable energy technologies to improve energy security and greenhouse gas emissions. The third is integrative global environment committees in investment and developed decision making. This is SIG funded and it's a duration of 2 years from 2015 to 2017. This project takes a strategy approaching a meeting in Rio Conventions obligated through the implementations of RED Roadmap. As a result, there will be an increased stakeholder/public donor support for this project, addressing climate change and related environmental issues using Solomon Islands and increase sustainable economic growth. This will increase the Solomon Islands' economic growth through renewable energy.
Questions is, what do you think Solomon Island has any contributions to the anthropogenic climate change after this climate plan and program?
Yes, we are trying to do this, and we are getting foreign aid to create a better way to grow economy in a sustainable way. There's room for improvement, and that is why we are here.
Alright, that's all of our interview today, and thanks for our 4 professors again, and we'll continue to focus on the problem of the climate change in Solomon Island. Thank you guys.